Hello, SJ. Welcome to the show.
Hi,
So
Nat. How
ha-
are you doing?
I'm good. So happy to have SJ on with me. She is a co-host of the 21 Going on 77 NBA podcast, which has a large focus on the Dallas Mavericks. She's also a great Twitter follow, like for anyone who loves Twitter. Like really, she's one of my favorite follows. So I'm so excited to talk to you about this series, just because you cover the Mavs a lot and you have a great perspective on the Warriors team because the Mavs just played them. So you heard Ime's clip just now when he was talking about how Boston ultimately overcome and won that game versus the Warriors. And I'm curious because a lot of what he was saying actually is like before the talk going into the Western Conference Finals between the Warriors and the Mavs, it was a lot of similar things that people were saying, like, the Mavs are not like other teams. They won't go away. It still ended up being a somewhat short series for the Warriors and Mavericks. But in this case, the Celtics have showed that also throughout the postseason. They won't go away. They won't go away. And they didn't go away. and they ended up winning this game and stealing home court and getting a game at Chase, which no one's been able to do. So what did you think from watching the game in terms of the differences between like this series and how it started and just like the matchups and the scheme versus when the Warriors played the Mavericks?
Yeah, so I was, I guess, as surprised as anyone that Boston kind of dominated the fourth quarter in the way they did to kind of steal that game. I feel like, obviously, we shouldn't overreact to like game ones, but I feel like that's a game the Warriors kind of had to have, given the way it was going. And the way the game started was why I was so surprised, because it reminded me of the Mavs series that, the Celtics, they kind of looked tight. The Warriors were, dominating at a point. Granted, the Celtics were up at the half, but the third quarter Warriors, came out and the Celtics looked a bit overwhelmed. And in that, sense, it's funny because that's how the Mavs looked, but the Celtics are different from the Mavericks in that they were able to overcome all the nerves. And I think it's the schemes that the Warriors kind of deployed against the Celtics, they were different from the Mavs in that with Tatum, they were much more, they wanted to concede the switch more to Tatum, whereas Luka, anytime he wanted to get the matchup he wanted, they would not allow it. Whether he was hunting Curry, that's, the hedge and recover, they would not let him get that matchup. And it kind of gave the Mavs, problems in a sense where it took them out of their game in that, you had guys like Dorian Finney-Smith making decisions. And, as the Mavericks, you don't want that. You want Luka, Brunson, those guys making decisions and not a Dorian Finney-Smith. But on the Celtics side, all five of their guys, especially in their starting lineup, they can do stuff with the ball. Like, Rob Williams, he's a great decision maker on the short roll. Same with Horford. So if they get the ball, in a tight spot, they can kind of do something with it. And I just think the Warriors are going to have to really dig in on defense, like really dig in on defense, because with the Mavs, we were easier to guard than the Celtics for some of the reasons I just said.
For sure.
And I think the Warriors, their defense just got away from them. And part of that is the Celtics hitting everything, because in that fourth quarter, the Warriors were forced to play against a set defense every single possession because the Celtics were not missing. So I think their defense should get better as the Celtics start to miss, based on that. But the way they're defending, the Celtics took advantage. It was the same thing in the Mavs series. A lot of open threes. I think the Warriors gave up the most open threes over the course of the playoffs.
Over the playoffs, they've conceded the most. Yeah,
and it's been a problem even in the regular season. They give up, they overhelp, they try to overload the paint, and they try to dare you to shoot, but you're daring, Derek White, who has the Fred VanVleet like premium like package in terms of fathers and being a new father in the playoffs. So you can't dare him to shoot. He's probably the most dangerous guy on the court at that point. So you can't dare him to shoot. Same with Horford. He's been shooting over 40%. You can't dare him to shoot. So I think the Warriors have to get back to defense.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw any of the earlier segments, but I think part of I think you're right about like just Boston always making their threes. And so they had to play against a set defense. But I also think a part of their lack of aggression had to do with getting into early foul trouble, their stars in particular. And so I think Wiggs, Steph, like it affected, their ability to kind of play defense the way that they would have wanted to. But it was a weird defensive game plan. I thought, I was surprised at the way that they went. So I do expect them to be more aggressive. I don't really feel like it's a game that they had to have. I kind of expected that at the end of 2, it would be 1-1. I did think the Celtics were probably going to be one of the first teams to come in and steal one. So, but yeah, if you go down 0-2, that would not be great. So I still feel good about it. I have the Warriors in 6. I'm curious, what's your pick? Because I didn't get a chance to ask any of the other ladies, and I want to know what's your pick for this series.
Yeah, so my pick was Warriors in 6, just because I just think they're the best team left in terms of, both sides of the ball. They have the best player left, in my opinion, Steph Curry. I just think they're more complete, have the most experience. So I picked them in 6, and I still have them in 6. It's just that first game is a little concerning, and they need to be on their P's and Q's from here on out.
Agreed. The leaving Derek White open doesn't actually concern me that much. I mean, like, he's been hitting them, but it's really Al Horford to me, like a little bit more like, did you guys read the scouting report at all? And in general, these were not just like, you contested a little bit. I mean, these guys were like wide open, so like they're still NBA players, like respect them a little bit more. But I mean, there's going to have to be some guys that you can see things to. And I still always think that's going to be a White, that's going to be a Smart, because like, if you even remember at the end, like the Celtics won game 7 in that Heat series, but at the end, the Heat got back in it because the Celtics were struggling to score, and Marcus Smart just kept shooting and shooting and shooting. And I feel like you're always going to get one of those things. The difference with the Heat versus, the Warriors is that the Warriors would probably make that shot that Jimmy made or missed, or like they would just, their offense will be buzzing more, right? And so, there's some things you're going to have to give up. And normally their offense can overcome a lot for like the way that they play defense. But this time it couldn't. And you just got to like tip your hat to the Celtics,
Yeah. And yeah, go ahead.
No, you go.
No, I was just saying, yeah, with that too, with Horford, Draymond has to be, better on defense, because I felt if the Warriors lost the series, Draymond will probably be the biggest thing you could point to, because he has to be, better offensively. He has to.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are banking on like the game that Draymond had and just like, oh, he was so awful. But to me, I sort of look at Draymond like the Celtics Marcus Smart. Like, don't bank on like that being the kind of game he's going to give you. So I think the Warriors will be better next game. Maybe that's just my bias as a fan, but I'm not that concerned. I think they'll do what they need to do. And the Celtics don't have the strongest home court advantage. Like, a lot of teams have gone in there and won this postseason. So I feel like they'll probably split there too. My guess is like after 4 games, it's going to be 2-2. That's when I say not the strongest home court, not that like TD Garden isn't live, but I mean that like every team is kind of, except for the Nets, have been able to go in there and beat them this postseason. I want to just quickly touch on the Knicks, which is weird because we're talking about the Knicks now in the postseason, but like, and right, the Knicks aren't really that relevant most of the time, but they made an interesting hiring decision the other day, and I think it's newsworthy. So they hired Rick Brunson, who is Jalen Brunson's father. And look, he, as an assistant coach on their coaching staff, and look, he's been an assistant coach in the NBA, or like he's been like in these circles. So it's not crazy, but it is interesting that it was the Knicks because Brunson has been tied to the Knicks. There have been like rumors. So just curious your thoughts on that.
First of all, I'm sleeping well. I'm not worried at all about Brunson leaving the Mavericks. In terms of the signing, I mean, to me, it just shows me like Tom Thibodeau, like he is just a loyal guy. Like if you notice, like if he has a job, Derrick Rose probably has a job, Taj Gibson probably has a job, and now I'm noticing that Rick Brunson, probably has a job too, because he coached under Tibbs in, like you were saying, in Chicago. He's coached under Tibbs in Minnesota. So, maybe he was gonna end up in New York anyway. But the timing is, funny, given that, it's not a secret that the Knicks want Brunson really badly, but I'm not worried about him leaving. I just don't see the advantages of Brunson going to New York. I mean, granted, it's a big market, but a lot of people have talked about Brunson, being a lead ball handler role in New York. He's still going to be playing behind Julius Randle and RJ Barrett. You know what I mean? It's not like he's going there to be the number one option. On the Mavericks, he's a lead ball handler. Like, yes, he's playing next to Luka, but he's also, like, his, usage rate is pretty high up there, especially if you look in the playoffs. His usage rate was, like, pretty similar to a lot of the stars that, a lot of stars we're talking about. So, and then granted, I don't think Brunson cares about that. I think he's a winner. He wants to win. And if you're choosing the Mavericks versus the Knicks, I don't think that's a competition in terms of, like, who's winning.
Okay.
No offense, but just saying.
Hey, thanks for watching Brother from Another on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe before you leave, and be sure to watch us 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Peacock. Appreciate you.